I hear from Jeff? (10/15/2024). EDA is now in session. We have a special guest today. We're going to bring him on our side of the fence for bonding bills and 101 stuff, but we're going to get to that soon. We have to approval of agenda.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Consent agenda. Approval of minutes of 17th, 2024, September.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Let somebody else do some more.
Aye.
Aye. Open forum, 3 minutes. Anybody here want to talk to us in open forum? Is that what he is here for today, or is he here for his section?
For his section.
Okay. Anybody at home online?
No.
Nobody? Moving on, old business. Oath of office for Dave Anderson, EDA member, current. Let's give him the oath of office and do this on film. How do we, you're right there?
Right here?
We're going to go
Right out front.
Podium here.
All right.
Front and center.
Videos and screen, please. You better get it from the other side. Oh, I'll manage. Do you want to?
Just getting the picture.
Thank you. I, Dave Anderson,
I, Dave Anderson,
duly and solemnly swear to affirm
do and solemnly swear to affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will discharge faithfully my duties of office
and I'll discharge faithfully my duties of the office
for the City of Dayton
for the City of Dayton
as an EDA Commissioner
as an EDA Commissioner
in the counties of Hennepin,
in the counties of Hennepin,
Wright,
Wright,
the State of
the
Minnesota,
State of Minnesota,
according to the law, to the best of my judgment and ability.
according to the law, to the best of my judgment and ability. Thank you, sir.
Now you're in.
I'm officially,
Official.
and sign this one.
I believe this one is you, Dave.
All right.
Now you're a bigger wheel.
There we go.
That is, well, you can sign this one if you want. That's yours. Here, you want the seal. You want the seal.
Oh, I want the seal one. So I can frame that with my Packer
You can?
stock.
Okay.
There you go.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Better, yeah. I could be like run for office. Again.
Only if you move.
I need to move, yeah. There is that. Section 6, new business. We're going to start with Resolution A. Resolution 124, amending bylaws, EDA bylaws. We have an amendment to attach to this, and we need some legal jargon attached to it as well, that the EDA and its commissioners, or its chair, will have the excused versus unexcused absence in our three-strike law thing that was always in there, but now is no longer in there, but we want it back in there. How do we say that?
Thank you, Commissioner. So you will just make an amendment, so you are approving the resolution and the bylaws with an amendment to add back in that language.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
This again is to make sure that we have our excused absences. Just call the chair, call admin.
So your motion will be,
My motion,
that the motion will be, you can
Three
probably,
unexcused, right.
as long as it's excused, that it's not, no strike against you.
correct.
That's what,
You agree with that?
yeah.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
And
All opposed? Motion carries.
Just so that I'm clear, the language that's being added is what's highlighted on the screen in the packet.
Let's see, just absence and commissioner.
Is the executive director you, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Counsel, that look good to you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Legal counsel.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Okay. You good too?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So we still carry, right? Motion's passed.
Yep.
Yes.
Discussion bonding bill. Do we need to talk to John first, or do we need to have you so she can connect up to it? We have John behind the podium today because, you know, when you're kind of one of us trying to get a solution solved, we're up here.
You're up here.
You're up here.
I like being up here. Feels pretty good. Maybe I should move to Dayton. What do you think,
There you go.
Run for office?
See, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Do that. I mean, part of the question, gentlemen, and man, an honorary lawyer, counselor, in front of you in your handouts, there is the PowerPoint that is available. That's going to be up there. And what your chair had asked me to do was to just put together bonding 101, basically. It's like, what is bonding? What does it mean for bonding in the state of Minnesota? And so I highlighted that, but I also have in there some links to you if you want to get deep in the weeds. On the very last page, there's we had nonpartisan council research put together 2 briefs that they had done in the last couple of years. One is a PowerPoint, the other one is an explanation. And then there's a really good one that the Minnesota Management and Budget put together about, what about bonding? What happens after the post for bonding? And so if you want, you can go to the next slide if you want to.
Do we need you before her or her before you?
Counselor?
I don't have anything to add right now on this.
Yeah, I mean, we can just,
All right,
we
Ron.
can get going, and if you see something, because there is going to be a question on the table, because it's the authority of the EDA. The question was, did the EDA have authority to do bonding? And so I went to the capital bonding person and said, who has authority on the EDA, or who has authority on bonding bills in the state of Minnesota? And, it's kind of like many opinions out there, what makes it up. And as you can see through the handout, which I'll go through in a couple of minutes, that it is absolutely across the board anybody you can think of. But there's some caveats, and there's some caveats that fit into some statutory regulation, and I put some notations on what statute drives that. But basically, what you're saying in a bonding bill, how many of you can get in the weeds on a bonding bill discussion in here? Nobody? Okay, so I'll keep it if it seems old
That's over
Hollywood
my
Town-
head.
Yes, Saloni. If it seems old Hollywood Township grade school, let me know and I'll jazz it up a little bit. But basically, bonding bills authorize the state to borrow money to pay for infrastructure projects, right, or construction projects like college buildings, roads, bridges, and it comes through the sale of an obligation of bonds. And that, eventually, they need to be repaid. There's some caveats to when that needs to be repaid. But here's the thing that it takes. A bonding bill really takes 60% vote of both the House and the Senate. And the way bonding bills work, it's not just that the entity got the money, but you need a chief author in the House and you need a chief author in the Senate, and both those bills need to follow parallel with one another. And what's amazing about bonding in Minnesota is it's usually $5 to $6 billion in asks every time there's a bonding session. So if you're a city or an entity that got a bonding bill, already, if you look at 2 years ago, the bonding bill with cash was $2.6 billion, $2.5 billion. So it was about half of what the need was that was established out there. Next slide. And as you go to the next slide,
John, you get one of these?
Yeah.
Okay.
as you go to the next slide, prior to that, it takes 60%. So 60% meaning you need 41 senators out of 67 to want to do that, right? And what it does is it then says to the state of Minnesota, you're authorized to take the debt to finance this project or the projects that are listed in the bonding bill. And then those bonds are sold, and again, that's going to be a projection of over many years, 10 years. There are some fiscal responsibilities regarding how do you cap that bond, how much can you bond the state. The one thing about Minnesota is when they go and borrow the money, it's basically at 0.001% interest. It's because our bond rating is so high, the state of Minnesota. So it's made sense the last couple of years to bond. Plus, if you look at for example, our Minsky systems, the ones that were built in the late 60s and 70s, buildings are actually falling apart. The HEPR systems are always coming up every year, or there's new building requests, or there's old building requests. Or for the example, the city of Dayton, and there was 5 projects that were requested in the last couple of years in bonding, and I can't believe it or not that 2 years ago we got $1.75 million for a wellhead. I think that was the first time the city of Dayton actually got a bonding bill, other than the interchange on 94,
Which was quite a snafu.
which was quite a snafu. Would you call it a snafu?
I did.
You call it a snafu. I like that word.
We're on
snafu.
film, I can't swear.
You really? Does Tim ever swear in here, Scott?
No.
No? Okay, that's good. I'm good, because I'd call your wife and tell you that I'm kidding. But if you look at the numbers, it's a numbers game, members, and it's really about getting a bipartisan support if you really want something to pass. And for example, Danny Nadeau is a Republican, I'm a Democrat. So what? Danny had the bill over in the House, I had the bill over in the Senate, and we actually ushered that through to the end where it got added in both the Senate and the House provisions on that. And end of the day, in connection, the city in connection with what I think Dean Phillips did and some other things, the city investment, it helped put that wellhead over the top. There's a deep need over in this part of the Senate district. And I just inherited this Senate district 2 years ago, so it's kind of nice to get back here. When I was on the school board, I would come here and give updates on the school district, because Dayton had 2,000 people in the city of Dayton that actually were the Anoka School District. So why do I remember that? I don't know. It's 20 years ago. So if you look at it, it's basically a numbers game. As we go to the next slide, John, and then you can go on to the next one after that. And because of the fact that if you look at that, it was $2.58 billion. I was close, 2.6, right? That came at the end of the session, which typically happens with bonding, because they're putting this thing together. Again, you got $5 billion worth of requests, and 2 years ago, it finally came together when there was $300 million that we took in cash. Now, bonding, you have cash part and you have the bonding part of it, right? If there's cash in the bank, you can get that cash versus a bonding. And some people will say, well, we should always just go with cash instead of bonding. That's kind of the debate why it gets all spread out over the whole year, because people are saying, well, no, we should not bond. And there are some legislators to this day, I can name a handful of them, that just absolutely will not vote for a bonding bill based on that piece. They don't like to borrow money. So in this case, the $300 million that was added at the end, we have a nursing home problem. Minnesota has the most people 65 and older, more so than you have in the K-12 education system. It's the first time in history. There's 850,000 kids in the K-12 system, and that's been static for years, right? Last year, we saw 1.1 or 1.3 million people 65 and older. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, two things happen. There's a need for home and community-based services, right? Because people want to age in place. But there's a Medicaid mandate, and there's 15 Medicaid mandates that each state must assure, and one of those is a nursing home, right? And people want to go, they get a right to go to a nursing home at the end of, their life when they're living. However, nursing homes are struggling with staff. There are 53,000 job openings in the caregiver bucket in the state of Minnesota, and that's everything from PCAs all the way to nurses, and a large amount of those were in nursing homes. So we're struggling to help incentivize or get people to come to the nursing homes, when in fact, here's what's happening though. If you look at it, those people receiving services, home and community-based services from the state of Minnesota, 90% of them want to receive those services in their home. They don't necessarily need or want to go to a nursing home. But a nursing home care is a needed mandate that Medicaid says states must do. The other one is hospitalization. That's a mandated service too. So at the end, we held on and got an extra $300 million to aid those struggling nursing homes. And it was the first time in the history of Minnesota, there was $3.25 billion that was invested in human services. And that's basically to address that workforce shortage, plus it was to align some of the waivers that needed some work done, and in this case, the nursing homes. It's still not fixed. It stabilized it a little bit, but it wasn't fixed. We used cash, Tim, to do that. So let's go to what was financed. So, because the question that you threw to me was, what gets financed? So if you look at that $2 billion, everything from the Minnesota Zoo to transportation projects, to go to the next slide, rapid transit, and then you go to the next slide, it's new state emergency operations center. The DNR threw in $247 million for parks, trails, boat docks, and building upgrades. DNR, Mississippi River. So as the EDA is considering what do we can or cannot do, right? What is it that our needs are in the community, and how does that do? You can go to the next one. So I just wanted to show you what was funded. Shows you that there's just a whole plethora of things that get funded. The last notation in there: ski hills, ice rinks, theaters, playgrounds, museums, sports centers, wellness centers, and more. And the list of more is there. But those were all identified that a community did, and they made it across the finish line. So go to the next one. And you can see those two shots, really, it talks about that infrastructure need. Bridge, you think about bridge upgrades or water treatment plants, right? But you also look at art centers, emergency centers. There was even a curling club that had gotten cash in the past, right? And on the cash bonding, if it's separate than the bonding bill, you don't need 60%. You do it with a simple majority. And sometimes you see the first year being a bonding bill, the second year being the cash one. So let's go to the next one. I know you only gave me 5 minutes, but I'm sorry. That just goes again on what needs, the votes that needed to do it. The dynamic really comes from lawmakers delivering projects for their home communities, right? At the end of the day, it's like David Tomasoni, who was a senator from Chisholm, used to say to me, at the end of the day, Hoffman, what matters is what you deliver for your community. In my handouts, there's 2 yearly updates, one from 2023 and one from 2024. And there's a list in there of those projects that were part of the work that I had done the last 2 years. And of course, you might recognize one of them, the city of Dayton in there, city of Champlin, Brooklyn Park. It's all about that piece, and that's what they want to do. John, you can go to the next slide. So the real question is, what about us, right? And that says, there's a Minnesota statute 469.091, and that should pop up on the screen pretty soon, that says how you were established, right? A city may, it's permissive language, right? Because not all cities have an EDA. This city happens to have an EDA. There are some neighboring cities that do not have an EDA. And so questions of bonding or questions of bills are actually run through there. However, you guys have attorneys that are smarter than any of us in this room who could probably figure out how you interact with the role of the city's authority versus the EDA's authority. Because if you go to the next slide, subdivision 2 says this: an economic development authority is a public body, a political subdivision of the state. Right? They'll just keep that, highlight that piece. The rest of it's sue or not sued. Everybody can get sued or not sued. But your authority is not immune from liability because of this. That's another legal thing. But I really wanted to highlight that you are considered a political subdivision of the state, and you are a public body. Is that correct, Counselor?
Yeah.
Thank you. I got a yes from a lawyer. So in that case, you exist. You have a right to go into a bonding request, right? Now, how you interact between the city council, how the city council sees that role, that's something, you all have to debate. But you have authority to actually put together some bonding proposals and to look at that, right? According to what I know. Here's the thing that I asked Senator Sandy Pappas on the next slide, John, is, Economic Development Authority does qualify. And what I mean by qualify is when we give bonding or we give direct appropriations, we can do direct appropriations to those entities that qualify. You see a lot of places that get some bonding that have to go through a different doorway, and the different doorway is it's got to be managed by somebody else, right? But what I really think it's kind of interesting about 469.001 is look at this. You clear on redeveloped blighted areas, you perform duties on a comprehensive plan, and you are actually adequate, safe, and sanitary buildings in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the state, right? That's your duties. Is that correct, Madam Counselor? I'm getting a yes in there. So, on the next slide is really, it talks about limited powers. And so, I don't know what limited powers are. It's a question, I think. And Scott, this actually goes to how's the interaction between, the EDA authority and the city council's authority, the EDA authority. That's not my debate. My thing is you guys has an agency or have authority to go ahead and request or look at bonding bills, right? How the interaction occurs, that has to happen. That's why you have a counselor. That's why you have people on this board that go dance between both of them, right? But that the authority must not exercise any powers without the prior approval of the city council. I don't know what that means, but it is a statutory reference, and so that's why I threw the question parts on there, right? Next slide, John.
And that's why our council's here today.
And that's why your council's here today, to really kind of get into that, piece of it. There's some links if members of the committee, those links are in depth. I mean, I could spend the next 4 hours going through, especially that last line.
You got 4 minutes.
I know. Especially that last one really gets into the debt management capital projects. It really discussions about after the bonding bill. It really gets you in the weeds for anybody that wants to really do that kind of conversation. It's there. Next slide. New business.
That was the last one.
Oh, that's Tim's. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, that's my last one for you guys. So, I mean, it was a quick, high-level overview. It's really simple. It takes kind of takes a village. You need 60% to get something done, Tim. So,
I kind of think the information is better today than on most regular meetings.
Would you mind me asking a question?
no, go ahead.
I find this very interesting.
Yeah.
So, in explaining bonding basically allows whatever entity to borrow money, which they have to pay back. However, that is often at very low, if not
Very low.
zero interest. Where does that money then generate from? The state taxes?
No, they borrow. The borrow's bonded. They're projecting the bond, but there's nothing out of the general fund. Unless it's a cash. If there's a cash or a general operating obligation in that day, then it's coming out of the general
So
fund.
the state will borrow money, let's just say from Wells Fargo, just for an example, and let's say you have $1 billion bonding bill, they borrow $1 billion, they pay the current rate and then allow entities like Dayton to borrow that at zero interest, so the state picks up the difference in the interest?
No, the interest is at 0.01.
So these private entities borrow that money to the state?
No, it's granted, the money's granted through a bond, the bond from the state of Minnesota to the entity that gets it. You don't have to pay any of the interest on that, David. That's a bond obliged by the state of Minnesota. Does that make sense?
No.
Yeah, well, it
No.
doesn't make sense for me either, but if you want to.
Because-
Health and Human Services. we
I'm
can
just
go, yeah.
questioning,
Yeah.
who pays the difference between, let's say, the interest rate Dayton would pay on the bond and the person or the entity that borrowing the money?
I guess I don't understand.
It's got to
that
come out of the
question.
state coffer, you would
coming out
think.
of the
It's
state.
coming out of the state. The state obliges that money, and the state obliges to pay that bond interest back over that 10-year period, Dave. So,
It does
should be
come
the-
out of the tax
It's the
dollars.
tax.
oh, I get your question. Yeah, I suppose one would argue that, your property tax, your whatever taxes that are going in there, somebody's picking up that interest rate out of it, right? But
and
it doesn't. Here's the thing that's interesting. You raise that. When we're having discussions about bonding versus appropriated funding, I never see that bonding affect any of the appropriated funding that,
Right,
like the
separate.
Department of Human, it's a completely separate animal.
And looking at the record of success for our district, I see things in there like Anoka County Highway 65 improvements. Would that be, let's say Dayton wanted to make improvements to 12. Isn't that a county responsibility?
Could be. I mean, there's a trunk highway, like an example. This is where it's going to be nice to have Sandy Pappas in there. There's always a debate about who's got the responsibility versus a trunk highway or if it's a county road, right? And sometimes you see a mix of that funding that goes in there. In this case, there's a combination of bonding and transportation dollars that were sitting out there. And then you get into, how does that transportation money, how is it affected right in there? And there's a mix in that one.
Brass tacks, it's always us paying the bill.
Yeah,
Oh, bottom line, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if that answers your question.
it does. I mean, regardless where it comes from, we're paying the bill.
Correct.
We're always paying the bill.
Always paying
Always.
the bill.
So everybody says,
It's just a matter of who gets.
what do we
there
get at state
first.
taxes versus local taxes? I tell everybody, it's at a different rate. We pay a higher rate local than we do state,
State.
because everybody's paying the state one, we're only one paying the Dayton one.
That's a good, I should
So,
use that.
it's a rate function.
Yeah.
We're always paying.
We're always paying.
Next item, Dave, did I answer your question? Anybody else have more questions
Yes.
for John? For John Sandberg?
One other question, John.
Yeah.
Mississippi Crossing, everything that happened over in Champlain, there's a lot of bonding that was involved in that, correct?
Yeah, it was the first time, again, the city, the first time in the history of Champlain, and it started with the dam, and it was this need for the dam, and we were up against a brick wall there. I was the chief author in the Senate. Mark Uglin was the chief author in the House, and it was the first time the city of Champlain ever got any bonding money. And then from there, it went, and there was a mixture. There's the Legislative Citizens Commission on Minnesota Resources. That's money that's set aside through tax gambling, profits that go into a bucket. And Champlain was able to clean out the mill pond with money from there. Plus, on top of that, we gave another $3 billion in bonding. And then on top of that, I did another bill, and I think Zach Stevenson was in the House at the time. That whole building, that $3.6 million, that was my bill in the Senate. And so,
Which you didn't get credit for, if I remember right.
that is correct. I wasn't even invited to the ribbon cutting on that.
The ribbon cutting.
It's kind of like my first.
You can't write that.
You can't make that up,
You can't write
Scotty.
Well, if you give Dayton 3.6 for
1.74,
Stevens
and
Park,
he was
we'll
at the
bring
ribbon
you over.
cutting. I had to get invited from him. to
I
get to that
invited
one.
you to the ribbon cutting. I invited the EDA. It's like, yeah, it's
Oh,
good.
geez.
But yeah, no, Scott, that was, but it took a lot of conversations. Todd Tumanen, who was the engineer for the city, as soon as he got he's now retired. When he got into it on why it was time to really do it, that the water was clean, it made a difference. And yeah, that so it's kind of nice to see that it's a regional. And in this case, the argument was, how is Mississippi Crossings a regional effect? Because that was always a question that pops from the chair of the bonding committee to a chief author. And I, of course, 169 is one of the most traveled roads, which leads into 10, which is 90,000
There's only
cars
two
a
of
day.
them.
There's only two of them, and there's people. That's the gateway. I kept calling it the gateway to the north, and the people were joking about that, but it was.
So, John, if we were to rattle this cage
Yeah.
and say we need some cash funding for certain projects. How do we start?
We start with
With
an
a phone
idea.
call.
Scott, you, everybody on this committee start with an idea, right? And we'll take a look at that idea. How much is this idea?
Who submits it?
Well, in this case, anybody can submit it. John could submit it to me. Just give me this is my idea. I mean, the city of Champlin, it was his idea. Then my staff went to the revisers and we had put into bill language. And then I signed off on the yellow jackets, went and got signatures on it, submitted it.
Will we need Danny on this too, Danny Nadeau?
Oh, absolutely. You need two to play on this one, and Danny, absolutely. If he wins the re-election here in November, then he's the one. If not, his opponent is the person. But other way, you need a House member and a Senate member. So it's kind of nice to have that balance that goes in there. So yeah, you guys can come up with an idea. John can email me.
Let's build a space shuttle, man.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Oh my God! Yeah,
We'll need
that'll
some-
make the front page of the Star Tribune. What do you think? Space shuttle? Dayton gets a
I've
space shuttle.
actually said that before. If someone wants us to build a space shuttle, we'll try. Might not fly very well, but we'll try.
Thank you very much.
Very nice presentation. Thanks, John. Do you want to hang for the rest of it, or are you going to bounce?
Yeah, I got to bounce in a couple minutes, so I'll just sneak out as you guys are doing your things.
All right. Moving to Section C of new business, recommendations of support for states' manufacturing applications to deed an MIF and JCF funding program. Would you like to come up here?
Certainly.
We'll build a space shuttle together. Do
God, it's funny.
We'll try. We'll try. I have used that line before.
you have the plans, the Elon Musk plans?
No, he's a little out there, so.
Good
morning, everyone.
For the record, state all your goods.
I am Wyatt Schallbetter, CEO at States Manufacturing. We're an electrical power distribution company that is currently located over in Champlin. So thanks for having me this morning. John, what was it, about 2 weeks ago that we met for the first time? So you got a presentation up there for me.
One page of it. So
One page.
This is it.
Awesome. Is anyone here familiar with what the Minnesota Investment Fund or the Job Creation Fund is? Would you like to talk about it?
Oh, God, don't ever ask a politician to talk.
I know. Well, I thought he was going to give a presentation for me. So a little bit about States real quick. We're a manufacturer. I'm actually fourth generation family owner in the business. My great grandfather started States in Minneapolis in 1922. We actually celebrated what we thought was our 100-year anniversary this spring in June. Turns out it was 102 years old. We found out because we were cleaning my grandfather, who's 96 years old, still alive, out of his house in Plymouth. And when we were cleaning out his home office as he was moving in, we found a letter he had written that he had forgotten he had written, but it established that States was founded in 1922. So 102-year-old, fourth-generation family-owned business in Minnesota here. So we are a very unique entity in that. Not many companies make it to fourth generation. Not many companies make it to 102 years old. 2 years ago, in 2022, we moved from Golden Valley to Champlin. When we moved from Golden Valley to Champlin, we had 62 employees. We employ 127 people in Champlin today. So we are one of Champlin's largest employers today. I haven't gotten the latest report from them, but in 1 year, we became a top 10 employer in Champlin. Our business has obviously grown quite substantially. Yeah. Good day to be here, right?
Let's move that to Dayton.
Yeah, well, we actually are not going to completely move to Dayton because this expansion is not about moving the business, it's about expanding the business. Because the power grid in the U.S. has been significantly underinvested in for 25 years. If you look at the investments that utilities, the IOUs in the country have done for 25 years, it's been very small. It's been anywhere from 3 to 5% a year that a utility has actually invested in the grid. And what's happened with COVID, why our business has expanded so significantly, is a lot of it was offshored as well. So a lot of manufacturing, a lot of utilities, a lot of the power distribution products, transformers, switchgear breakers was moved to Mexico, it was moved to Korea, it was moved to China, and a lot of it's done in Europe. We've invested heavily here in Minnesota. We've invested in Champlin. So we went from around 56,000 square feet in Golden Valley to 95,000 square feet in Champlin. We filled our building up in a year and a half. We are actually looking to take 40,000 square feet in Champlin and the rest of the building that we're in there, as well as 503,000 square feet in the Cubes, which is the vacant building just off of 81 and Dayton Parkway there. As you can imagine, a 500,000 square foot expansion of our business requires significant investment. So we are looking at spending around $23.5 million on the facility. And what we've done is we've gone to deed and put in an application with the MIF and the JCF for funding to facilitate that investment in CapEx spending and modification of that facility. So we're a completely vertically integrated manufacturer. We do everything from the sheet metal manufacturing, the cutting, the forming, the painting, any of the welding that needs to be done, up to the assembly and wiring of the large scale power distribution equipment that we make. So there's two components that we're looking at today. We're looking for a partnership, because that's what's required as part of the deed programming, that Dayton would have to sign up to administer the funds for the MIF and the JCF. So two components to it, $1.45 million for the MIF and $1.35 million for the JCF. There's also some additional programs out there that I believe are more on job creation side too, so that could be an additional component to what we're looking for the City of Dayton's assistance with the expansion here. So
Expansion will bring how many jobs to this city?
when we're up to full scale, we would see around 350 to 400 jobs for the city. So if you look at the facility, it was tailor-built, I think, to a distribution center. Yeah. As you can imagine, as a manufacturing company going in there, we'll have quite a few more jobs than what a distribution center.
How would you feel about a spur?
Don't need one today, and the reason you got to ask the question. John asked the question as well. Part of what we build is utility substation buildings, so they're very large. They could be anywhere from 24 feet wide to 85 feet long. They don't fit on a rail car. So that's a core component of what our business is, and it's usually specialty trucking that has to move those. But
King Solutions like that one.
They would.
So, the cube's kind of a lot of space.
It is.
And you're going to bring 400 jobs to this city.
Yep.
Low, medium, high pay tech jobs.
So our production floor is a union production floor, so very high-paying production floor jobs. And then today in our 127, we staff 22 electrical mechanical engineers, very, very large facet of project managers and sales folks as well. Our average wage right now is $60 an hour when you factor in sales, project management, top-level leadership, and the production floor.
Is Cube's going to be big enough for you? I think half is gone, isn't it?
No.
Oh, it's all wide open.
Completely vacant. So we are looking at taking half the building.
You are taking half.
And we actually have a roofer on the other half as well. It would be the idea, is what we'd look for.
Yeah, that'd work.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'd have to pull out a Champlin altogether.
That's a long-term question. So.
I'm stealing here, do you mind?
But what does Champlin? Did they slight you at one point, or
no, not at all.
Daily basis.
Daily basis? I like Champlin. It was interesting when we looked at moving from Golden Valley to the northwest suburbs here. I live in Maple Grove. 75% of our workforce ended up with a shorter drive, and it wasn't anything we proactively did. We actually we looked at it on the back end, and we kind of felt it. We knew roughly where everyone was at, and so when we mapped it out after deciding on the Champlin building, it was pretty unique to see 75% of the people have
Company morale was up.
Yeah.
Company morale was up, shorter drive.
Yeah. Yep, very much
Well, it's
so.
going to be shorter now if you're over here.
It could be. We have one individual that lives 225 yards from our building. He still drives to work every day, so we give him a hard time for that. But
So you build these facility, or these kind of like prefab buildings almost, is that what it sounds like, and then you ship them on trucks?
yep, so that's one core component of our business. So the power distribution market, we have 26 UL files. So we can build anything from a small little junction box up to 38 kV, so 38,000 volt switchgear used in utility substations and everything in between. So heavy power, heavy industrial, data centers, utilities, that's our core market. Healthcare. Most schools in Minnesota, North Dakota, Iowa, South Dakota have backup generation systems. So we build the power distribution that handles an emergency generator utility intertie, so that if there's an outage or storm abatement, it's usually our equipment there that's facilitating the transfer of power between sources.
Are they stored inside before you ship, or were you going outside?
The building's large enough that it should facilitate everything staying inside.
Okay.
Good question. No doubt a tour of the facility for the EDA.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we talked, John, we'd welcome anyone that wants to come see our current facility. More than welcome to come down to see Champlin and what we do there. really it's going to be an expansion our capabilities. It's not about moving it. That was part of our discussions with Champlin. We're not leaving Champlin. We're looking to expand in Champlin as well.
Well, their EDA in a school is ours. So let's have the question in front of us. You were looking for us to support this, and we had to facilitate it as an EDA for your business. And is that a motion for us?
Yeah, so what it is, so States Manufacturing is wanting to expand, they can expand anywhere they want
Take a
in the
donut.
country. Because they're choosing to expand in Minnesota, they're asking for funding from the state. So it's a forgivable loan and a grant. How this works through the state is the city is the administrator of the forgivable loan. So the state gives out the city money, the city gives it to states, assuming they meet certain goals for employment and wages.
Correct.
And the
So-
city kind of oversees the funding of it? Or
Yes.
administers the funding of it?
Yes.
Even though it's the state's money?
Correct, it's the state's money.
You're the plan administrator per se with their program.
What's
There's no cost to the city to do.
what's our fallback on this? What do we? What's if this
We're
goes
never
bad?
at
What's
risk,
that
correct?
for us?
The state doesn't give us money, we don't give it to the state.
Okay, so no retribution on our behalf.
Correct.
So it's kind of a touch-free thing other than administering. What's our administration fees on this?
It's hourly, so we don't, it's all a pass-through.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was in there. You get paid for it, basically,
Yeah.
right?
okay then. Any other questions for?
No, I mean, I think it's a better use of the warehouse space than warehouse, so.
Especially when it's not used at all right now.
Yep.
Okay, I want to looking for a motion to grant and approve.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Second. Who second?
Dave seconds? No, Juan seconds.
Juan.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This will go to the city council on October 29th. It's a special meeting, so the council is required to hold a public hearing 7 a.m. So it'll be
Bright and early.
Why so early?
very early.
What's your time frame?
So we are looking at being operational in the building at the end of quarter Q1 next year.
Q1.
So when we moved to Champlin, we started the renovations of that space. So we had to demo out some office space and build out in June of 2022, and we were operational in September of 22. So we've been in there for just over 2 years at this point. But we've done it before, and it's an ambitious goal, but that'll be our goal.
Well, maybe we someday can talk you into moving to complete operations here.
If we do, I will be happy to have that as something we have to do, because that means we are successful beyond our wildest dreams. So,
That's a win. We'll take
exactly.
that.
Win for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, John. Resolution 0224, approval of purchase agreements of legal property, PID 36-121, 2341, 0021, 36-121, 2341, 0010, 36-121, 2341, 0011, and 36-121, 2341, 0012.
So, Commission, this is the purchase agreement in your packet, starting on page 28. This is for the Lent property that we spoke about a couple months ago. So Ryan Lent is the son of David Lent, who is the property owner of record, although he has been deceased now for 2 years. I spoke with him the other day. He signed the purchase agreement. In your packet is the purchase agreement today. I'm looking for approval of the attached resolution. Key terms to the purchase agreement are purchasing 1.19 acres. The purchase price is $150,000. That was what we had talked about a couple meetings ago. Earnest money is $10,000. The contingency date is December 1st. So that is the date, essentially, that the purchase agreement, the earnest money is no longer refundable. The title analysis needs to be done within 30 days of the execution of the purchase agreement, so hypothetically 30 days from today, the 15th. And closing date would be on or before the end of this year. I need a few more documents from Ryan Lent to confirm that he actually has the authority to sign the purchase agreement on behalf of the estate, essentially. So that will have to go through one more signing mechanism with him. He knows that. He's getting me those documents. And then, assuming that the EDA approves this purchase agreement today, I will move forward with ordering the Phase 1 environmental study. I didn't want to start spending that money until this was officially all locked up. I do have the title commitment already. I've taken a look at it. There is not anything in the title that gives me concern. I am available for questions.
Okay?
Is this property vacant?
Yes.
There's a
It's got-
garage.
Kind of a little
There's a
garage. on it.
Right, but I mean, there's no residential housing on it.
It's an interesting plot of land. Have you gone down and looked at it all? I thought I saw you down.
Right in downtown Dayton.
Yeah, it's, yeah. There's a house there in the corner where you can see there.
You know,
Okay, so you need from us the nod to go ahead with the other piece?
Yes, so what I'm looking for is an approval of Resolution 022024, and that authorizes myself, actually you, and John to do all of the actions necessary to effectuate the purchase agreement and then the next steps to get this to closing.
To determine whether all the kind of due diligence, basically.
Correct, and then anything else that would be required for closing, AKA signing closing documents, those kinds of things.
Scott, you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, do your thing. Thank you. Does that clear up our D? John,
Clear up our what?
does that clear up our D?
Yes.
Discussion, tax forfeited property, PID 31-12022-130010. I believe our council is going to have a discussion on this one as well.
Yes.
Feel free, you got to turn it up just a little bit for me.
Okay, sorry, I'll try. So I feel like I'm yelling at you. Okay.
Don't,
so,
you can't yell,
Pretend you're
go
at
ahead. Not that I'm not used to that already, right?
Okay, so this parcel is up on your screen, it's about a little over 9 acre parcel that is currently owned by the city of Dayton under a special use deed. I am still working on getting the documents on this. I have spoken with the county, a woman named Amber, who is in charge of their forfeit property division, essentially. And the issue with this property, there's a few things going on. So we have a deed on this property that we got in 2012. And that deed has use restrictions on it, so we can only use it for transit hub, park and ride, and there was 1 or 2 other items. I have not seen this document. This is what I've been told by Amber. I'm waiting to get a copy of it. I'm sorry, 2016 is when we got this deed. The use restriction is on there for 30 years. So we have 22 years left on this use restriction deed. At the end of the 22 years, the city just owns it outright with no restrictions on how they might use it. The process to essentially,
Where does the deed come from? I mean,
the county,
The county did that?
Yes.
So the county said this is what you can use it for, period, for 30 years.
correct. So we do have one option, or one fact to keep in mind is that we do have the ability to go back to the county and say, we don't want to use it for a transit hub or park and ride or transportation related use. We would like to use it for fill in the blank, but it would need to be some other public use. So I don't think this is a good idea, but something that John and I had talked about was like, I know you're looking for a fire station parcel, not saying this is the right fit for that, but it would need to be something that is a public use specifically. So that is one thing that we can do. In terms of being able to essentially buy it from them outright or just take straight ownership as the EDA or frankly as a city, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, there was a law that was passed this year that requires that if we were to say, county, take back, we're going to give you back this deed, that would trigger a requirement that they have to put it up for public auction. We have the ability to bid at the public auction and purchase it, but it has to follow some very specific steps in the statute, along with the related Department of Revenue guidance about that statute around how this would have to go down. But essentially, us and anybody else on the market could purchase the property at that auction. So they cannot. I guess the issue is we cannot say we'd like to buy it outright from you and circumvent that public auction process. This is according to Amber. I've looked at the statute and I sort of agree, but I want to do a little bit more digging. If that's something that the EDA wants me to spend more time on before I spend your money, I wanted to make sure that it was okay for me to do additional digging on that. So I'll come back to that or get an answer to that question in one second. But the long and the short of it is, if you do nothing for 22 years, the property is the city's to do whatever they want with it. If they want to try to find some way to make it on the tax rolls essentially now, right, to give it some sort of economic value now, then the mechanism could be to give it back to the county to trigger this public auction process, knowing that we might not even choose to bid on it, right? We might just let the private market try to pick up this piece of property. But my understanding from talking with John is that you already have a fair amount of parcels that are in private hands that have not been developed. So you run the risk of you push it over to the private market and the private market sits on it for another 15 years. And in terms of creating any sort of economic benefit or growth to the city, it doesn't do anything then either. Or you can look at kicking it back to the county and then planning to bid on it at the auction yourself. Right now, the last estimated value that the county has for the property is from 2021, and that was $1.4 million. So you can assume something over that would be what they would be asking for at the auction or looking to get at the auction.
This law took an effect this year?
Yeah.
So before that, we had carte blanche to it, and we should have just purchased it then.
Potentially, yeah. And so here's where this is going back to
The use would have been the same, though.
asking for authorization to do a little bit of research. According to Amber, there is this window of years that the Department of Revenue, the Minnesota Department of Revenue, has identified as the time frame for which this particular statute triggers. And this property is within 15 days of the start of that trigger. So it forfeited September 13th, 2012, and the trigger was August 31st, 2012. So, but I can't find anything that says that. That's something that she's just told me. My preliminary research has not brought anything up. But again, I haven't spent a lot of time on it yet. I'm assuming she's right. I don't have any reason
If you were to spend more time digging?
I would spend more time digging to see if that's actually true in the Department of Revenue guidance. I've taken a look at case law, a little bit of case law, and obviously this is a brand new statute, so there isn't anything on this statute, but it's in a specific chapter that I've kind of looked around. There isn't much to be said there. I don't have any reason to not believe what Amber is telling me. At the same time, we're all old enough to know that trust but verify is always a good plan of action. So,
And if it was that, we would be able to circumvent the
So-
essentially waiting, or the auction?
correct. So, let's say that this had forfeited in July of 2012, then this would supposedly not be bound by that statute. And so initially she thought that it wouldn't be a problem, but then when she looked at the date of the forfeit, that's when she said, this will not work because of the date of the forfeit.
Our first question is, do you want to do some digging? Do we want to spend some money digging to see if Amber's accurate.
How much time do you think it's gonna take, or how much money?
I would guess 3 hours.
Our second conversation is, had we acted upon this in the first place, way back, we wouldn't be in this position now. So that's more of a
Maybe,
statement.
maybe not. I mean, it still had that deadline date.
30 years.
Well, that goes away. So if we were to assuming that this had been something that was done, 2 years ago or a year ago or whatever, you could have kicked it back to the county and then just rebought it, and you would have owned it free and clear with no use restriction.
In first position.
In first position, yeah.
Yeah. Now we're in
That
any
would have been a
position.
year ago, you're saying?
According to what Amber told me. Well, I mean, less than that, because this legislation was enacted this legislative cycle, so August of this year.
Mr. Chair, I think the EDA would like a better understanding of kind of what our options were and what our options now. I don't have any issues with the attorney doing research on that. Like, we do this for other items all the time.
I'm still burnt on the fact that we'd have done this before, we wouldn't be in the second position. Okay,
Had we not been dragging our feet for the last 2 years?
that's what I meant to say. Exactly.
Well,
Okay, so we need some time to dig into it. Would you dig into it? And we need a motion for that?
No.
No,
Okay,
just
then just,
trying to be respectful of spending money.
we want to nod our heads.
I think the general idea is we want to buy it and flip it.
So, okay, so let's talk about that. You want to buy it and flip it because the goal is you want to try to make a little bit of money off of it, or because
I
you
wanna
want to
get it,
control what's going to be developed there.
I
Both.
wouldn't want to get it developed into something where there's some tax roll coming back to the city out of it.
So and the reason that I asked that question is if the goal is just to get it developed, and you think that this has some sort of demand right now, like there are people who would like to put something there but can't because we own it, then you can kick it back to the county and it will go up for auction.
Yeah,
And hypothetically, that person, could buy it. I realize there's a lot of ifs and potential pitfalls on that, but you would spend the least amount of money and the least amount of effort just kicking it back to the county and which forces them to put it up for public auction. If you're hoping that you can flip it and make some money off of it, that obviously is not a part of that equation. And so that would require that you buy it, but of course you have to buy it at a low enough price that you're able to flip it for something, which I don't know if that's realistic given the public bid, the public auction position that we're in.
All it really gives you is the power to decide who buys it if you do it the other way.
Well, and the one thing to
But-
keep in mind, you own this triangle piece right here. So you own this little over 1 acre piece that's right there. So I assume potentially whoever would be interested in this piece would also want that piece. And so from that perspective,
Well, and that's the other piece that crosses the road, and I think that's where the Dayton city sign is, in that little corner there across the road.
yeah, and maybe there's
You're gonna have to redraw the line to get rid of, no one,
you'd probably have to do a swap
Can't
for
do
that.
anything
So
with
you
that.
could take that triangle and there would, obviously the other triangle above is a larger piece of property. It's worth more just looking at it, et cetera, et cetera. But so potentially you still have the ability to negotiate with a developer from the perspective of you have that corner piece that they may want. And so that would be how you could potentially have some influence in the development that happens there. But again, those are things that are not sure thing. There's a lot of ifs and a lot of pieces have to fall in place for that to work.
So if the EDA's goal is just say like manufacturing, you guys would like a manufacturer to be located there, the easiest way to do is just zone it for manufacturing. Right now it's manufacturing or warehousing. That's the simplest way and the most cost efficient.
Okay,
If you try to make a profit on it, then it's buying it from Hennepin County and then playing developer.
Given the new law, it's a whole different thing now. It's a way different thing.
Totally, way different.
So right now, the cost of doing nothing is zero. I mean, we've got till
We can do nothing for 29 more years.
2031.
Yeah, you have 22 more years on the use deed.
Another mistake Dayton's made.
Another mistake.
I'm going to suggest, or can we do a closed session? Like, I think we need to talk about this in much more, go in depth and more detail. I don't know if a
We
closed
can't
session.
close until he gives prior notice to it. We can't close.
That's what I'm saying, we'd do it separate, not today, but at some other time. But I think this in itself is an entire meeting going through options.
I mean, yeah, I
Session
don't
to consider
disagree.
purchase is what it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say again?
Oh, John, give me a look, like, what would we be using a closed session for? And the closed session would be to consider selling, purchasing property. In this case, consider selling it, essentially selling it back to the county. For free, but
Yeah.
that would be the,
I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as an idea. I think there's a lot to talk about, more than what we can talk about in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and primary thing is what's the objective? of-
Exactly, that's something that we
You know, I
need to
mean,
discuss.
Obviously, there's some people that have a knowledge of what they think the objective is, but to me, if the objective is, let's make sure that that gets developed into something that creates a significant tax base, that's either a technology or manufacturing type business, not a warehouse. That can be accomplished by zoning. So, I mean, maybe that's, we need to go into a closed session and talk about what is the real objective of what we want to do here. Because it doesn't sound like the objective is to turn it into a public use.
I don't know if we can
Kind
go in
of
closed
thing.
session with talking about
Well,
strategy.
so the closed session, you'll have to correct me, is specifically about purchasing or selling land,
correct.
not zoning.
Not the objectives.
Well,
Well, I
but
mean, maybe we have that could be open session.
yes, and you can talk, I mean, the concept of the closed session, and I don't know, it has to necessarily be closed or open. I don't know if there's anything necessarily that has to be secretive about thinking about what you might like to do with this parcel. Technically, you do own it right now. You do nothing for 20 years, you own it with no restrictions. The city does. So those are true statements. You can talk about what you might like to do with it. The closed session would be, do you want to sell it? And in this case, it would be selling it back to the county for free. And part of that analysis would be, what would be the reason to do so?
Do we know if there's any use restriction on that little triangle that you said?
Well, so that triangle, that whole thing there is a regional stormwater pond, so that is not moving.
You're talking about the darker green area there, is that what
That
you're
little
saying?
corner up on the right-hand corner, did you see the pond?
Yeah,
This thing
but
here
it's
is-
also part of the land you're talking about.
Yeah, but
you're
it's a
saying-
pond, so nothing's happening with it, it's staying there.
Nothing will. You can put
But you're
nothing on it.
saying the little piece right there where your cursor just
This
is,
is
that's,
also being developed or dug right currently for stormwater pond that serves the Opus project across.
okay, so the city owns that as a stormwater pond and nothing else is gonna, what my concern was is like, is there some kind of use restriction on that, but you're saying, well, the use restriction is it's a pond.
Right here, yes.
Is there more capacity in that stormwater pond, potentially for this site?
I believe so. I'm not 100% certain, but I believe so.
So that's another chip that you would have then, is that's where they would put their stormwater.
Yeah, other than stormwater maybe, for
Everything
the
else.
existing site.
Nobody's gonna buy stormwater at retail rate.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
no, but if they can buy, if someone buys that land and they know that they have capacity to put stormwater,
Well, we
in,
have
that
land
might be a
brokers.
selling point.
We have land brokers
Yeah.
on the cuff ready to make that happen, and now with this current law, it's certainly, Kaiser Soze is our input.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think that's a benefit that was pointed out, is that could, if it has the capacity, be a selling point to whoever wants to buy that, whoever the potential buyer might be.
I don't think we should flip it back to the county at all. If anything, I'd say we'll take a nap for 20 years and then we let it become ours. But we really need to
Just out
find
of
out that law.
principle, right?
What's that?
Just out of principle.
But I think we should do some digging.
The agonizing effect here is it's okay for the county to make money on it, but it's not okay for the EDA to make money on it.
Yeah, the statute was surprising. When she was talking to me about it, I was pulling it up and I thought, I don't understand the genesis for why they
Yeah.
wrote that this year. I don't have that answer. And I'm not going to waste time trying to answer
Probably
that
the
question.
precedents they made on the ones that got sued at state level. But then all cities are doing, except us.
Yeah.
Okay. Making sense? We all got the handle on this? How's it by you?
I would invest another $500, $600, $700 to go and dig it a little further.
Was there
Just in
something
case.
can we address, like, set aside more time at the next meeting? So we can discuss this? It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily need to be open or closed. I just feel like we need there's a.
Well, we need her
lot
data
more-
first.
Right,
Yeah.
get her data.
Yep.
Next month we can.
Put it on the agenda?
Yep,
can-
well, yeah.
Okay. We need to move on now. We ready? What are we, 8:35? Recommendations for adopting affordable life cycle goals for the 2021 or 30 decade. What's a life cycle goals?
Life cycle goals. So, knew this yesterday, and I forgot it overnight. So, this is through the Metropolitan Council administers what's called Livable Communities Act. So it's grant dollars that's provided to cities that participate in the LCA program. In order to participate, those cities have to adopt affordable housing unit goals for affordable housing and life cycle units within a 10-year time frame. So this is 2021 through 2030. The numbers that are shown on here were assigned to Dayton, I'm going to say 10 years ago or longer ago. So the goal here is affordable housing for 183 to 330 units by the year 2030, and life cycle units meaning units that are have a variety of, I'm going to use the term density because that's how the definition I remember seeing at the Met Council, of 8 units an acre. So an example would be to an apartment building at 8 units. So once again is to have, I'm going to call it zoning that would allow affordable housing and life cycle housing to take place. It's not necessarily building these, it's creating the environment where this type of development can occur. We're already doing that currently. We're just not saying that we're doing it. So, for example, the southwest corner of Dayton, that is guided for mixed-use development at it's either 12 units an acre or 15 units an acre. The EDA's reviewed a couple of concept plans for that. Those 2 projects are going forward. So again, the intent here is the city saying, yes, we are committed to providing an environment for affordable housing and life cycle housing. If we don't meet these goals, there's no consequences to it. If we're participating in the LCA communities, we qualify for grants from the Met Council. In this past September, the Met Council provided $1 million in grants to 7 different communities. One of these that I'm highlighting is in Blaine, where Blaine was given $56,000, although they requested quite a bit more to do an assessment for manufactured homes that should be replaced.
This kind of doesn't sound like EDA territory.
Well, it is, because you have the authority for,
HRA?
well, HRA. The EDA serves as a HRA.
Right. So this is an HRA program?
Yeah.
And
Well, I
what's,
mean, it seems like you're getting, at least based on what they did in '24, is very little money. And the question is, how do those goals, how do the life cycle goals that we would support compared to what's in the current plan, so to speak?
Oh.
Because you're saying we're doing it,
do it quiet,
we're
right?
doing it conceptually, but are we doing it to the level that they want?
No.
Because I know Met Council's always pushing for way more than what we're.
Sure. The market demand up to this point has been single family and townhomes. So like we're, in single family as in, higher end homes. That's the market demand, that's what we're building. So we're, at least my opinion, we're not, as a community, we're not mature enough where we're hitting a market for affordable housing or lower end housing. Like we need more population to get there and more services to get there. When I say services, such as like retail, I don't know how you could live in Dayton without a car.
Right.
If you want to go to the grocery store, it's 10 miles away.
So what's our kung fu today? What are we doing?
This is a recommendation to participate in the Livable Communities Act
A recommendation from,
to the council. So this, ultimately, the council has to.
oh, so it's EDA recommending to the council
Correct.
to adopt it.
I have no interest in it.
This is kryptonite, and I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole.
No.
Motion denied for me.
Yeah.
Guys?
Doesn't feel like much benefit for the
Denied?
potential risk, but.
There's nobody here with interest in that unless you guys want to change my opinion. Good to go, moving on.
Need a motion, or a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Motion to deny?
I'll second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion can go away. We're good. Staff updates?
So projects that are currently on the pipe, so States Manufacturing, as the EDA is now aware, the States is requesting I'm going to say one forgivable loan, one grant. This will go to the City Council on October 29th at a special council meeting. Second item, Dayton Creek Edition. So the EDA had reviewed this, I believe, at the past, most previous meeting. Dayton Creek is in southwest Dayton on Dayton Parkway in Brockton. They're proposing to plat outlots for future apartments and commercial. Assuming that this is passed, still they are outlots, and so the developer would sell an outlot to somebody else, and then that person would replat those outlots for whatever the specific use is going to be. And then we have Parkway neighborhood, a little similar. So Parkway will be going through preliminary plat approval in November. Their first phase is a 180-unit apartment building. They will have probably about 10 years worth of development, and that will be all apartment buildings. There's one commercial corner where it's likely it'll be a gas station.
Where's the Parkway neighborhood?
On the other side of the freeway.
Oh, the other
Also
side.
Yeah,
southwest
that
Dayton.
56-acre piece. I think it's 56.
Okay. I think I know where it's at.
So here's States Manufacturing in cubes, Dayton Creek Edition in the very southwest corner, and then Parkway neighborhood is next to it. The Parkway neighborhood will also be asking for public assistance. I've got to dig in that a little bit, so I don't know if that will come to the EDA or not, if it would only go to the City Council. So I think that's probably going to occur in November as well.
So they're both south of. I guess it would be
So
south, yeah.
this is Interstate 94 and then Dayton Parkway through here.
So that's your developments. Morris Leatherman surveys, is that?
Yes. So this was presented to the council this past Tuesday, last week. So it's a scientific survey. It was a phone survey of 400 residents. I believe the average response time was about 14 minutes on the phone. I picked out one slide here that was probably the most helpful as far as is there too much development, about right, or too little? So the green is kind of what is the market demand for the residents that are responding, and I'm just kind of going in order here where we have job-producing businesses, affordable housing, one-level association maintained housing, assisted living, starter homes, we'll say service and retail, and restaurants.
So that's what the biggest.
The
want.
biggest demand is.
Yeah. Or want from residents.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, that's a no-brainer. It's been that way for a long time.
Yep. So there were, I can't remember how many questions. There's over 100 questions. So this is available on the city's website. It's being pushed out on Facebook. There's kind of three things to look at. So one is the actual report itself, which is quite lengthy. There's a PowerPoint presentation, which is this, one slide that kind of ties the two together. And then for anyone that would like to listen to the presentation, there's a link to the, the last October meeting. I can't think of what the date was. But Morris Leatherman or Peter Leatherman did an excellent job kind of presenting it and putting it in context of where Dayton's results were in comparison to a lot of similar cities that are in a similar situation to us. October 8th, City Council meeting.
Okay. Master plan open house, moving forward.
Yep, so this is not a short day. So tonight is the open house for the master plan. This will be at the activity center in the village from 6:30 to probably 7:30 or 8 or so. We held another open house, and I want to say it was October, November of last year, to kind of gather information from the residents that are within the 1 square mile area. And now this is a presentation to those residents again.
Okay.
So after this, it will go to the EDA at a future meeting, as well as the Planning Commission, the Park Commission, and the City Council.
Everybody gets in on it, huh?
Yes,
Good there?
I'm good.
Approval of Development District number, November 19th.
Yes, so in announcements, Amanda could probably do this better than I can, as far as adopting a district or development district.
So Commission, on the November 19th meeting, there will be a resolution for your approval. That is something that is required under the EDA statutes, and it is recognizing what your development district is. So your authority is to buy and sell property as you want to, but it must be property that is in an identified development district. Your original documents that you've approved did not identify a development district. What's coming before you on November 19th, we have to notice it for a public meeting and a public hearing and do some things like that, which is why it's not on this meeting. But essentially, I made it the entire city. So if it's in the city border, within the city, it's part of the development district. And so basically, that needs to get passed before we close on the Lent property. That's it.
And it wasn't in there the first time.
I'm sorry?
The verbiage was not in there. We adopted it and the verbiage wasn't in there.
No, when you adopted your bylaws and all of your legal documents, you did not identify a development district.
Where'd it go?
It was never there.
It never existed.
Okay.
So what she's saying, you gotta identify the area in which you're gonna,
My
but the
concern is
question.
why didn't we have it in the first place?
Yeah, well, probably,
We just spent another attorney to go
Because
through all this and.
Because no attorney told us that we needed to have it.
yeah, that might be the case.
And for the record,
It didn't take me long. It was a quick thing. It's a short resolution.
for the record, again, I'd like to know how many days we missed on the triangle. Did we miss by a month or a year?
Look like a month.
When that law becomes inactive?
Sorry, say that again?
This new law.
This new law.
So the new law, so the date, well, if you're asking about this, the trigger date, the property was forfeited on September 13th, and the trigger date was August 31st. I mean, that happened years ago, right? That happened in 2012 or 2016, whatever it was. The law that just was enacted when at the end of this legislative cycle. So I think those they trigger. Well, this one would have started like August 1st.
2 months? 3 months?
So
Month and 13 days, it looks like.
August 1st was when, I think that was when this was, I didn't look down to see what its effective date was. I'm assuming it was at the end, August 1st, July 31st.
Report back, let us know what you find.
I will.
Thank you.
I have one quick question on the development area, the resolution for that.
Yes.
Is it fairly normal for a city or an EDA to identify the entire city? I'm also wondering what kind of feedback we might get on the public hearing.
I have
Like,
never.
are people going to be like, well, why is it the entire city? Or-
No, I have never not put it
Okay.
as the entire city,
Perfect,
because you just
okay.
don't know where
Yeah,
economic
you
development
don't
is going to
Well, it
happen.
makes sense. I just was curious.
You were about some fallout?
Huh?
You were about some fallout?
No, I was just, as people, citizens, and you say, well, the EDA is looking at the entire city for development, their minds go to
Yeah.
places like, I'm in my neighborhood, they're not gonna develop in my neighborhood. And that's not the intent at all.
No.
You could see
The
people
miscommunication, yeah.
drawing goofy conclusions, and that's what I was wondering.
Well, the other reason why I do the entire city is it has to be contiguous. So it isn't like you can spot it, right? So in that regard, there's really not a mechanism other than identifying the entire city.
Yeah.
Under the statute, that's the rule in the statute.
When she has her initial official findings, you'll send that to the group.
Yes.
And are you getting emails or I gotta keep sending you?
I mean, you can keep sending them to me.
All right. Put a fork in it. Who's done? Fork. Thank you, council. We appreciate your
Thank
input.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, staff.
Motion to close? I think, right?
Let's have a motion to leave.
I make a motion to.
Second.
To close.
Approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's do it.
All right.
Motion carries.